إن الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله صلوات الله وسلامه عليه أما بعد يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله حق تقاته ولا تموتن إلا وأنتم مسلمون يا أيها الناس اتقوا ربكم الذي خلقكم من نفس واحدة وخلق منها زوجها وبث منهما رجالا كثيرا ونساء واتقوا الله الذي تساءلون به والأرحام إن الله كان عليكم رقيبا يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله وقولوا قولا سديدا يصلح لكم أعمالكم ويغفر لكم ذنوبكم ومن يطع الله ورسوله فقد فاز فوزا عظيما أما بعد فإن أصدق الحديث كتاب الله وأحسن الهدي هدي محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم وشر الأمور محدثاتها وكل محدثة بدعة وكل بدعة ضلالة وكل ضلالة في النار ثم أما بعد الحمد لله ولا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله ما شاء الله ولا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله. Alhamdulillah, we continue going over the tremendous book by the Imam, the Mujaddid Muhammad bin Abdul Wahhab, rahimahullah ta'ala. Alhamdulillah, we have taken the first three conditions from the conditions of Salah, or the first three prerequisites from the prerequisites of the Salah. And they are al-Islam, wal-Aql, wal-Tamyiz. Al-Islam, the intellect, and distinction. At-Tamyiz. We have reached and we have come to Ash-Shart al-Rabi'. We have come to the fourth prerequisite or the fourth condition. And that is Raf'u al-Hadath, the removal of al-Hadath. The removal of al-Hadath. Naam. And al-Hadath, it is removed by al-wudu. Raf'u al-Hadath, the removal of the hadath, وَهُوَ الْوُضُوء الْمَعْرُوفِ. Then this will be the wudu that is well known. The wudu that is well known. وَمُوجِبُ الْحَدَثِ, and that which necessitates the wudu. That which necessitates the wudu, it makes the wudu a must, then it is al-hadath. It is al-hadath. Al-hadath is of two types, so that we understand what is the meaning of al-hadath. Al-hadath is of two types. You have al-hadath, the small hadath, and that is removed by the wudu. And then you have the major hadath. The small hadath is like when an individual, he passes wind, or they use the bathroom, and the like. Then this will be the small hadath, and this is removed by al-wudu. And then you have the major hadath, and the major hadath, this is like janaba. This is like the state of impurity after relationships with one's spouse. This type of hadath, this is removed by al-ghusl. This is removed by al-ghusl. على كل حال, the removal of the hadith, then this is a condition from the conditions of the salat, or a prerequisite from the prerequisites of the salat, that we have to be in a state of purity. So we have to remove the hadith. We have to remove the hadith either by wudu, in the case where we have water, or by at-tayammum, in the case where we do not have water, or we have water, but water is scarce, and we don't have the ability to use it for wudu. So in this case, we will make at-tayammum. على كل حال, what is intended, al-murad, al-wudu, al-ma'ruf, is the wudu that is well known. وَمُوجِبُهُ, and that which will necessitate that we have to make a wudu, then it will be al-hadath, the state of breaking the wudu, which will necessitate that we make the wudu. And the state of breaking the wudu, as mentioned, it can be by passing wind, or it can be by going to the bathroom, and the like. وَشُرُوطُهُ عَشَرًا, and the conditions for wudu, then they are 10. The conditions for wudu, they are 10. So you see, wudu itself has its own shurut. Just like the salat, it has shurut. It has conditions and prerequisites. Likewise, the wudu, it has conditions and it has prerequisites. From them, and there are 10, but from them, al-Islam, wal-aql, wal-tamyiz. Al-Islam, wal-aql, wal-tamyiz, then these are conditions of wudu, just like they are conditions for as-salat. And you will find that these conditions, the 10 conditions for the salat, you will find that these conditions, you will find that the conditions for the salat, the conditions for the salat, and the conditions for the salat, they are 9. They are 9. You'll find that these 9 conditions, then they are the conditions for the vast majority of the acts of ibadah. The vast majority of the acts of worship, then you will find they have the exact same 10, exact same 9, conditions. That they will have the exact same 9 conditions. There are exceptions to this, but the vast majority of the acts of worship, then you will find that they have the same 9 conditions. However, for the salat, or for the wudu, then the imam, he mentions, then there are 10 conditions. Others from the ulama, they say, they enumerate them as being 8 conditions. على كل حال, from them, there is al-Islam, al-aql, wal-tamyiz. And the alama, Sheikh Muhammad Amal al-Jami, he says, كما تقدم, just like they had already come. وَالنِّيَّةِ, also you have to have an intention. وَالنِّيَّةِ, na'am. This is also a condition for the wudu, just like it is a condition for the salah and all of the acts of ibadah. وَاسْتِصْحَابِ حُكْمِهَا بِأَنْ لَا يَنْوِيَ قَطَعَهَا حَتَّى تَتِمَّ الطَّهَارَةِ. And it also has to be an accompaniment of a consistency, and a consistency of intention until the act of tahara, until the act of wudu is complete. Meaning that we have to intend to do the wudu, to make wudu from beginning to end without interruption of the intention. Without interruption of the intention. Naam. And this is a very important point to remember. Because there are, as the Prophet ﷺ, he said, إِنَّمَا الْأَعْمَالُ بِالنِّيَّاتِ وَإِنَّمَا لِكُلِّ امْرِئٍ مَّا نَوَى. That verily actions are but by their intentions, and everyone shall be rewarded for that which they intended. So, when it comes to wudu, a person, he can make the wudu. Naam. He can wash all of the body parts that are to be washed in making the wudu. But his intention is not to make wudu. His intention is not to become or not to be in a state of purity for the salat, but rather his intention, it may be to cool off. It's a hot day. Now, so he washes the same body parts that he will wash while making the wudu, and he does them in the exact same order, but his intention is not to enter into a state of purity, but his intention is to cool off, for example. Now, so an individual, when he makes the wudu, his intention must be consistent from the beginning of the wudu until he completes the wudu. If he were to break his intention by intending in the beginning to make the wudu for the salat, to enter into the state of purity, and then midway during the wudu, he takes notice that it is very hot, it is very humid, and so on and so forth. Naam, and then he turns the water to just cold water, and so on and so forth, and he begins to, from that point on, to complete the actions of the wudu, but with the intention of cooling himself down so that he can be cooler, and so on and so forth. Then this will break his wudu, and his wudu, it will not count because his intention of wudu was severed, and it changed to cooling himself off. So the intention for making the wudu for the salat to enter into the state of purity, it has to remain consistent from beginning to the end. So this point here becomes a condition for the soundness of a person's wudu. Also, in qita' mujib, he has to cease and desist from that which will necessitate a wudu. He has to cease and desist from that which will cause him to have to make the wudu. So for example, if an individual is going to the bathroom, he has to wait until he has completed using the restroom before he can begin to make the wudu. He can't start to make the wudu while he's still in the process of using the bathroom. Now, likewise, if an individual was passing wind, he will have to wait until the completion of the passing of the wind before he initiates the wudu. He can't initiate the wudu while he is passing wind. So it has to, the reason that will necessitate the wudu has to cease and desist before he could make the wudu. Now, wastinja, and he will have to wash his private parts with water after going to the bathroom. This is from the conditions of the wudu. أو استجمار قبله, or he will have to use stones, or he will have to use, as the ulama they mentioned, what also enters into istijmar, also what enters into the using of istijmar is using stones or using toilet paper, and so on and so forth. That the using of toilet paper, then this enters into the meaning of istijmar. Now, to the end of it. But yeah. And then there are others, but inshallah ta'ala, we will come to the rest of the 10. We would like to look a little something at these particular ones, inshallah ta'ala. As relates to the niyyah, that we have touched upon the intention for the niyyah. We have touched upon the intention for what is meant by the intention for the wudu. Now, wastisḥab hukmiha, and the continuation of its ruling, أنه بهذا الاستصحاب تعتبر ركنا. The Shaykh, he says, and from this standpoint, the continuation of the intention, then, although, and this is where we start to see the ikhtilaf, and why some scholars have enumerated the prerequisites for the wudu as being 10, and others have enumerated them as being 8, and the like. Because the reality is that the continuation or the intention to have a continuous intention from beginning to end of the action, it will actually enter into the action itself. And remember from previous classes, we mentioned that the prerequisite is that which takes place before the commission of the action itself. So the prerequisite is that which takes place before that which it is a prerequisite for. Whereas the rukn, or the pillar, is that which takes place during the commission of the action. So the pillar, it is that which will take place while you're doing the action itself. And when you look at this particular point, as Sheikh Muhammad al-Man al-Jami, rahimahullah ta'ala, he mentions, he says that from this standpoint, it would actually be considered a rukn. It will actually be considered a pillar. Why? Because it is that which is taking place inside of the wudu itself. It is not that which happens before the wudu, but it is happening during the wudu. So because it happens during the wudu, then it wouldn't be considered a condition per se, but it will be considered a pillar. Now, it will be considered a pillar. And again, this is just as a refresher of what we have gone over in previous class with that which relates to the difference between a prerequisite and a pillar. The Imam, he says, وَمَعْنَى, and the meaning of استصحاب الحكم النية ألا ينوي قطع الصلاة وذلك قطع الوضوء. He said it means that an individual does not intend to sever the salah, and that is by the severing of the wudu, because without the wudu then there is no salah. أو قطع أي عبادة نوى, or that he cease and desist from any that he cease and desist from any action that he is doing, or that he cease and desist from any action that he is doing, but he has to have an intention to complete that action from beginning to end. ولا ينوي أنه في أثناء العمل أن يقطعه حتى تتم الطهارة. He says, so this means that he does not intend throughout the duration of the action or while doing the action that he severs it and changes his intention until what? Until he finishes the wudu, or till he finishes making tahara. So again, just in other words, he has to have a consistent intention from beginning to end, that he is making wudu for tahara, not for anything else, not for any other reason. Not for anything else, not for any other reason. Another example of this can be an individual who begins to make the wudu because he's making wudu for salat. But while he is washing his hands, he realizes his hands are dirty. So now he flips his intention, and now he wants to wash his hands from the dirt that are on his hands. Maybe he was painting, maybe he was, I don't know. Maybe not paint, because paint will become between the hand and between the skin, and we'll come to this point inshallah ta'ala. But perhaps he had some dirt on his hands, under his fingernails or whatever, and he begins to say that now he wants to wash his hands from the dust that is on his hands, or he wants to clean his fingernails or something to this effect. Then this will be a severing. This will constitute a severing of his intention. This will constitute a severing of his intention. نعم. ولو نوى أن يترك الوضوء وهو في أثناء الوضوء. And if he does this, if for example a person is starting the wudu, he's washing his hands, and he realizes, oh, his hand has some dirt on it because he was doing whatever, and then now he wants to wash this dirt off of his hands, then this will sever his intention for the wudu. So now the question comes, what is a person to do if he falls into such a case? What is he to do if he starts to make the wudu and then he changes his intention because he sees his hands are dirty? Now, so he washes his hands, now his hands are clean, and then at that point, he now wants to continue with his wudu. What is he to do? Does he continue with the wudu from that standpoint and renew his intention from that point and continue and go to the next body part? Or does he start all over? The Shaykh, he says, فَيَجِبْ عَلَيْهِ أَن يَسْتَأْنَفَ بِن جَدِيد بِنِيَّةٍ جَدِيدَةٍ. The Shaykh, he says, then at this point, it will be incumbent upon him to start his wudu all over again from the beginning with a new intention. So if a person is making the wudu, and then for whatever reason he changes his intention, whether it be to wash that body part, whether it be to become cooler, and so on and so forth, and then he now wants to go back to completing the wudu, then he has to start the wudu all over again from the beginning with a new intention. He has to start the wudu all over again from the beginning with a new intention. And this is something to be very mindful of, because the waswas, the shaitan, this is a way in which he plays tricks on the people. This is the way in which he plays tricks on the people. Naam. And like this, because a person can make the wudu, and then the shaitan, he points out, oh look, your feet are dirty. Make sure you wash your feet real good. So now the person's all the way at the end of the wudu, all the way at the end. But instead of completing the wudu, now he starts washing his feet. Now he starts washing his heels. Person says, oh, my heels are little, whatever. Now he starts scratching at his heels and so on and so forth. Now, so we have to be very mindful as to not destroy our acts of worship by changing our intention midway through. But we have to be consistent inside of our intention from the beginning to the end of the act of worship. And this is what is meant by this particular condition. This is what is meant by this particular condition for the wudu. Nextly, the Shaykh, he mentions inqita' mujib, the removal of that which necessitates wudu. The removal of that which necessitates the wudu, meaning al-hadath, because that which necessitates the wudu, then it will be the state of breaking the wudu. He says, the Shaykh, he says, الذي هو الحدث يجب عليه أن ينقطع. He said, it is incumbent upon him that he cease and he desist. It is incumbent upon him that he decease and he desists. وأن يفرغ من البول ومن قضاء حاجته. He says he will have to stop the urination, meaning he will have to complete and finish from urinating, or he will have to complete using the bathroom. He will have to complete using the bathroom. وَمِنْ خُرُوجِ الرِّيحِ. Likewise, with passing wind, he will have to wait until the wind has completely passed. نعم. وَيَنْقَطِعْ مِنْ كُلِّ ذَلِكَ حَتَّى يَتَوَضَّأ. And he must cease from all of that and finish with it before he begins to make the wudu. وأما مع وجود يعني وجريان الحدث فلا يصح الوضوء. He said, but with the presence of the continuation of whatever that act of bringing you into a state of impurity is, whether that be by passing wind or whether that be by going to the bathroom, then trying to make the wudu while that situation is still present and still going on, then that wudu, it will not count. Then that wudu, it will not count. Then the Alama, he goes on and he says, wal istinja al-ma'ruf. He says, and al-istinja, that is well known. The istinja, that is well known. Naam, al-istinja. And this is how it should be pronounced. Al-istinja. A lot of times, Juyaanee, in the American dialect, or I'm not going to say American dialect, but in the American mispronunciation, we say istinja. Make sure you make istinja. But it's al-istinja. This is how it should be pronounced. Al-istinja is well known. للإنسان أن يجمع بينه وبين الاستجمار. Al-istinja, this is to clean the private parts after going to the restroom by using water. This is what is meant by al-istinja, to clean the private parts after going to the restroom by using water. Well, istijmar, al-istijmar, this is the cleaning of the private parts after going to the bathroom by using stones or by using toilet paper and the like. This is al-istijmar. Now, so this would be the cleaning of the private parts after going to the bathroom by using a dry means, by using again either stones or toilet paper, or the like. This is al-istijmar. The Shaykh, he says, وَلِلْإِنسَانَ يَجْمَعْ بَيْنَهُ وَبَيْنَ الْإِسْتِجْمَارِ. He said, it is for a person, it is permissible to combine between the both of them. It is permissible for a person after using the restroom to use water and to use toilet paper and to use stone and so on and so forth. That an individual, he can do both. He can do both simultaneously. وَلَهُ أَنْ يَقْتَصِرْ عَلَى أَحَدِهِمَا. He said, and also it is permissible for him to suffice himself with just one of them. It's very important. He said, or it is permissible to just suffice oneself with just one of them, meaning that he only uses water and then that's it. He doesn't use anything else, or he only uses istijmar, he only uses stones, or he only uses toilet paper. And this is for both. This is for both urine and for both defecation. That if he urinates, then he can just use water to purify himself. If a person defecates, then he can just use water to purify himself. Likewise, if a person urinates, then they can just use al-istijmar to purify themselves and to clean the area. Now, whether that be by stones or that be by paper, toilet paper, and the like. Likewise, if they defecate, then they can just use toilet paper or stones to clean the area to clean the area from that which is there from what is left after using the bathroom. Al-istinja, the Shaykh Juyaanee says, al-istinja wal-istijmar qablahu, that he has to make the istinja wa istijmar before it, meaning before the wudu. And this is a very important point that we have to stress and make sure that the Muslims, they understand the proper etiquettes and they understand how they are to clean themselves after going to the bathroom, because all of this is connected to what? To the wudu. Because if a person does not make istinja, if they do not make istijmar, then their wudu does not count. The wudu does not count. So all of these things are incumbent and important that we know, that we teach ourselves, and we teach our families. We teach our families and we learn for ourselves so that we can preserve our salah. Because without doing these things, then there is no wudu. And if there is no wudu, then there is no salah. ويشترط أن يستنجى الإنسان قبل الوضوء أو استجمار. He said, and it is incumbent and it is stipulated that an individual, he makes al-istinja before he makes the wudu, that he makes al-istinja before he makes the wudu, or that he makes al-istijmar before wudu. وله أن يجمع بينهما, and it's permissible for him to combine between the two. والistijmar, and when it comes to al-istijmar, هو استعمال أحجار ثلاثة فأكثر, then ويقف على الوتر, then this is to use 3 pebbles or 3 stones or more. The minimum for istijmar, the minimum for using the dry cleaning, for lack of a better term, right? Then it will be 3 stones, or to wipe oneself 3 times with different parts of the tissue. It doesn't have to be necessarily 3 pieces of tissue. As Shaykh Ahmed Bazmoul, he mentions, he says a person, for example, maybe he can wipe himself twice with 1 piece of tissue, because they can wipe themselves, then he can fold it to where there is exposed another clean portion of the tissue and can wipe himself again, and that will equal 2. So it doesn't mean necessarily using 3 pieces of tissue and so on and so forth, but he can, as long as he wipes himself with 3 times with 3 clean faces of the tissue. So he have to wipe himself at minimum 3 times. Or it could be more than that. But the Shaykh, he says, يقف على الوتر, but he should stop upon an odd number. So it should be 3, or it should be 5, or 7, 9, so on and so forth. Now, when matlub, because that which is intended, and it's a very important point, that which is intended, izalatul ayn al-najasa. What is intended is to remove the source or to remove the najasa itself. Is to remove the najasa itself. So that will mean to remove the defecation or to remove the urine itself. Now, so to remove the urine or to remove the defecation, لا إزالة أثرها or أثر لا إزالة أثرها. Not that the removal of the signs or the traces of this urination or the traces of the defecation, it may remain as long as the defecation and the urine itself is gone. لا إزالة أثرها. Not that the traces are no longer there. He says فأثر, because the traces of the defecation and the traces of the urine or the traces of an-najasa, لا يزول إلا بالماء. It is not removed except with water. Water will remove the defecation and its trace. Water will remove the urine and its trace. Whereas the dry cleansing, it only removes the urine and defecation itself. It does not remove the trace. الاستجمار ولكن الاستجمار يزول عين النجاسة والأثر وأثرها الظاهرة. Because الاستجمار, it removes the dry cleaning, it removes the najasa with the defecation or the urine, and it removes it and that which is apparent from it. وما بقي من الرائحة وغير ذلك يعفى عنه فتصح الصلاة. But what remains, see what is meant by traces, what remains from the smell, and other than that, what remains from the smell and other than that, right? Because a person may argue, but there's a smell, or maybe there's some particles and so on and so forth. But yeah, this is forgiven. This is pardoned. So a person, his salah, it will count. So he tries his best to remove the traces to the best of his ability. But if there's still some particles, if there's still a smell, then this is fine. He's forgiven. He's forgiven, and his salah, it counts. Because the only thing that will remove the najasa itself and the traces, be it the smell and those particles and that, is what? Is water. Water is the only thing that will remove all of these things. Now, على كل حال, a person's salah will count if he only does al-istijmar, because that which remains from the trace, be it the smell or some particles or whatever, after he tried his best or she tried her best to clean themselves, then this is pardon, and their salah, it counts. Al-istijmar laysa lid-darura. Very important point. The dry cleansing, then this is not only due to a necessity. Some individuals, they think that the only time you resort to not using water and to using a dry method of cleansing, then this is only out of necessity. But this is not correct. This is not correct. And the Shaykh says, كما يتصور بعض الناس, like some of the people, they think, بعض الناس, they think that only out of necessity, meaning you only use al-istijmar when you don't have water to make istinja. This is not correct. Naam. This is not correct. The Shaykh says, بل الإنسان but rather for an individual, and يستجمر مع وجود الماء. He said, but an individual, actually, he can use the method of dry cleansing, even if water is present. Even if water is present. Naam. ولا يستنجي. And the water is present, he don't use it. But rather he just use the dry method of cleaning. This is fine. This is no problem. وَالَّذِي كَانَ عَلَيْهِ الْعَمَلُ الصَّحَابَةِ. And this is that, يعني هذا الذي كان عليه عمل الصحابة في وقتهم. This is how what some of the Sahaba used to do, is that, يعني, they would make al-istijmar, right? They would make al-istijmar, and they wouldn't make al-istinja. Some of the Sahaba, as taught to us by our Sheikh Sulaiman al-Ruhaili, rahimahullah, hafidhahullah ta'ala, he mentioned that some of the Sahaba, they restricted themselves to just al-istijmar. They only used the method of dry cleansing. They didn't use the water. And the reason for it is that they deemed it to be more to their preference, because they didn't want their hand to come into direct contact with the najasa. They didn't want their hand to come into direct contact with the urine or the feces, and so on and so forth. So therefore, they would use al-istijmar, and they would not use al-istinja. And this is perfectly fine. This is perfectly fine to do. So the issue of al-istijmar, it is not something that is related to just out of necessity because you can't use the water. But even if water is present, you can still choose to use al-istijmar, because this was done in the time of the Sahaba. This was done in their time. لأن الماء, and the Shaykh, he brings another example as to another reason, so as to why this was also the case. He says, لأن الماء ليس بمتوفر كاليوم. He says, because water at that time, it wasn't widespread like today. Another reason why some of the Sahaba will make al-istijmar, even if there was water present, is because water was not vastly available like it was, or like it is today. Today, in most places around the world, water is very easily accessed. One can access it from inside of his house, and so on and so forth. Whereas a different situation than having to go down to the well, or having to go down to the river, or what have you, and then collect the water, and then to bring it all the way back to the house, and that's the only water you have, is that what you brought back in buckets from the river. So of course, in a situation like this, then the water is more scarce, and so on and so on. Although a person, he can still use the water if he chooses to, and he has the ability to do so. But if not, due to the scarcity of water, and they see a wisdom in that, then they can suffice themselves to just al-istijmar. And that is the cleaning by use of the dry method. The Shaykh goes on and says, وَمَعَ ذَلِكَ مَا كَانُوا يَتَكَلَّفُونَ بِطَلَبِ الْمَاءِ. He says, so with that being the case, they didn't used to exert themselves by seeking and asking for water. إِذَا قَضَى الْإِنسَانِ حَاجَتَهُ وَيَسْتَجْمَرَ فيكتفي بذلك ولو كان الماء موجودا. He said, so if an individual had went to the bathroom, went to the restroom, answered the call of nature, and then they made al-istijmar, then they made the dry, or the cleaning by the dry method, then they would suffice themselves with this, even if water was present. But this is low. It's low. It's still for shurut. This was only if the conditions were met. Only if the conditions were met. And the condition for al-istijmar, of using the dry method of cleaning, then it is azalatu aynul najasa. Then you have to get rid of the najasa itself. So that would be the feces or the fecal matter, and you have to get rid of the urine itself. Now, if you got rid of the urine itself and the feces itself, then at that point, then it's okay for him to pray, and his prayer will be accepted. وَأَمَّا الْأَثَرُ, but as far as that which may remain from some particles or smell and the like, فَيُعْفَى عَنْهُ, then he is forgiven for that. كَذَلِكَ مَنْ وَطَيَ النَّجَاسَ بِنَعْلَيْهِ أَوْ بِخُفَيْهِ. Likewise, if an individual, if the najasa, it touched his sandals or it touched his khuf, then فَلَهُ فَدَلَكَ بِالْأَرْضِ حَتَّى إِزَالَ عَيْنَ النَّجَاسَةِ. Then at that point, a person, he would just rub it on the ground until the najasa itself, it was gone. Then he would just rub it on the ground, wipe it, walk with it on the ground, rubbing it on the ground until the najasa itself is gone. فَبَقِيَ الْأَثَرِ, even if some traces remain from the smell and so on and so forth, له أن يصلي في نعليه وفي الخفين, then it's okay for him to pray in his sandals or his shoes and in his khuf and his khufayn. Then his salat, it will be okay as long as as long as he wiped it on the ground and got rid of the najasa itself. نعم ففيهما الأثر بعد إزالة عين النجاسة, even though there will be some traces after the fecal matter and after the urine is removed itself, then it's okay for him to pray, just like the person who made an istijmar and he completed his istijmar. And the proof of this is the hadith of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. إذا أتى أحدكم المسجد, if one of you comes to the masjid, فلينظر, then look, يعني تحت نعليه, then he should look under his shoes. And when he comes to the masjid, he should look under his shoes. فإن رأى فيهما قذرا, if he sees on his shoes some type of fecal matter, or he sees on it يعني in the light, then the Prophet ﷺ, he said, فَلْ يَدْلُكَهُمَا, then بِالْأَرْض, then he should rub them both on the ground, فَلْيَدْخُلَ, and then enter into the masjid, and يَدْخُلَ بِهِمَا فَيُصَلِّي فِيهِمَا, he should rub them on the ground, then enter into the masjid while still wearing those shoes, and then he should pray in those shoes. And this brings us to another issue, inshallah ta'ala, that it will make the class more lengthy than it has already been, and we apologize for the length. So we will stop here, bi'ithnillahi ta'ala, and we will pick up from this point, inshallah ta'ala, in next week's class. فنتوقف هنا ونكتفي بهذا القدر, وصلى الله وسلم على نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين, وجزاكم الله خيرا.